Hello YouTube, Bane666 here. So it was 6 years ago today that I uploaded my very first video. 6 long years, which it's been an interesting ride. A ride which isn't over yet. I intend to stick around for at least a while longer. But it's been interesting watching the YouTube community change, as well as society in general. And the number of anti-feminists definitely grow in number. And also society become even more divided. It seems that a lot of people are incapable of discussing these issues these days. Not that there haven't always been people like that, but it seems to be growing in number. But anyway, I want to talk a little bit about the very first video I ever uploaded. You see, I really hit the ground running because the very first video I ever uploaded is without a doubt my most popular, and by most popular I mean most viewed. For those of you who are long-term fans and subscribers, it's probably not my most popular video. In fact, a lot of you probably haven't even seen it, but just in case you haven't, I'll include it at the end after my end credits. But without a doubt, it is my most well-viewed video. In fact, it has 750,000 views, and it's a video that still gets views and comments just about every day. Now, normally when I upload a video, it will get most of its views and most of the comments in, say, the first 3, maybe 4 days. And then after that, depending on the video, it will, get some views and some comments afterwards. Sometimes a video will take off a week later, and, maybe because someone shared it somewhere, and suddenly it's become popular, and I'll see the number of views and comments go up. But normally, 3 or 4 days, and then it dies off. But not with this video. This video still gets views, it still gets comments, and it's still fairly active, and I think it's largely due to the topic, which was Chanty Binx, and also the fact that it's only 4 minutes, as most of my content is not only 4 minutes long. It's a lot longer and a lot more detailed, and I fully understand that not everyone is going to sit down for an hour and listen to a serious talk about the sentencing gap or something like that. So I fully understand how a short 4-minute video about an obnoxious feminist is going to be far, far more popular with the general public than an hour-long discussion on male suicide or something. That's unfortunate, but, that's reality. I'm not shocked at that finding. But the other thing that stands out about this video is the comments. They're very, very different than the normal comments I get in most of my videos. Now, normally, most of my comment section is pretty good. Not always, but, compared to most YouTube channels, the comment section is pretty good. So, those of you who leave well-thought-out comments, well done. We need more of that. But this video's comment section is really a mixed bag of good and bad in many ways. And a lot of the comments are bad, both from the anti-SJWs as well as the feminists. Take this one, for example, which was made 3 days ago at the time of recording. Sometimes I think to grab M16 and smoke all these SJWs. Now, I suspect that this person isn't actually going to do that and is either trolling or just letting off steam or something like that. But these comments really don't help our cause. Because these are the type of things that our opposition take and then spotlight and make out that they're the only type of comments and then use it against us. This is not helping our side. This is actually harming. And then there are the comments saying she needs big dick or something like that. She needs a good fucking or something like that. Once again, some of these can be amusing, I admit, but they don't really help the conversation. They don't really help our side. They're not overly productive. And most of them are probably made by 15-year-olds anyway. Here's another one saying, one of the only women I'd be violent to. Yeah, that's not good. Please don't make comments like that. Well, I know that the people watching this tend not to. Okay, like I said, this is a different audience than I normally have But if anyone out there is watching who wants to make a comment like this, please don't, okay? It doesn't help our cause. You're actively playing into the hands of the SJWs. You're aiding our enemy, so please don't do that. Be a little bit smarter than that, for fuck's sake. And then, of course, there are the comments saying that she's not a real feminist. Yeah, I've got quite a few of these over the years. I'm not going to go through all 4,942 comments trying to find one, but I have replied to some, and they then tend to delete those comments. But it amazes me that someone can actually make the argument that she's not a real feminist. I mean, she self-identifies as a feminist. She's at a feminist protest. She's reading something from a feminist website, Jezebel if I remember correctly. She's using feminist ideology as an excuse and a talking point. She's talking about patriarchy and rape culture and male privilege. How exactly is she not a feminist? I mean, this is the most amazing case of no true Scotsman I've ever fucking heard. What exactly does she have to do to become a feminist, I wonder? What they actually mean by she's not really a feminist, or she's not a true feminist, is she's an embarrassment to feminism. I wish she would go away. But instead of denying her feminism, maybe you should have a look at the problems within your own movement. Just a little word of advice there, you know. And the amazing thing about the she's not a true feminist argument is often these same people will claim that just about anyone is an MRA. Everyone who's not a feminist apparently is an MRA, but becoming a feminist is very selective. In fact, the criteria tend to change from person to person, depending on what particular brand of feminism they subscribe to. It really is an amazing game of moving the goalposts when you're talking to feminists like this. But there is one comment that I want to go through in this video, and I actually replied to the guy, but I want to reply again in a little bit more detail in this video, and show it to you guys, because it really shows a certain type of mindset. Now, as I said, I'll include the entire video at the end if you haven't seen it, but basically what I did is I took two different clips of Chanty Binx and compared them. One was at a gay pride event where there was a Christian preacher to the side with a microphone preaching the gospel of Christ to the gay sinners. Now, to be fair, he wasn't over the top, he wasn't screaming at them or anything like that. But I can understand how some people at the gay pride event may be pissed off at that, right? And Chanty Binx was one of them. She went up to him and said, "How dare you come to this event and preach at us and judge us, etc., etc." Now, I compared that clip to Chanty Binx doing exactly the same thing at a men's rights event. That is exactly the same thing as the preacher. She was at someone else's event, trying to shut it down, judging, screaming, yelling, far worse than the preacher ever was. And keep in mind, I'm an atheist, so, you know, I'm not sticking up for the preacher because I agree with his ideology or anything, but she was clearly far, far worse than he was. And I was just pointing out in this very simple first video I ever made and uploaded to YouTube, what a massive hypocrite she is for doing the very thing that she judged someone else for. That's it. That's a very simple message, right? It's only a 4-minute video. I didn't go into the topic in any great detail, although I would in later videos. I was just pointing out her hypocrisy, her double standards, her entitlement would be a good way to put it. So keeping all that in mind, let's dive into this comment which someone left 3 weeks ago at the time of recording and see exactly what this guy had to say. Chad4208. He says, "I don't know this woman, and I'm not defending her, but it's funny how you never say what this meeting was she attended in 2013. Yeah, it was a men's rights meeting held at a university. The talk was going to be about male suicide and issues like that, and the talk was going to be given by a woman and a gay male. which really wouldn't be of any concern or interest except that the people who like to point their fingers at men's rights activists like to claim that we're anti-gay and anti-female, which is clearly not accurate. But to be honest with you, I don't really care what the sexuality or the gender of the people giving the talk is, as long as it's useful information and it does good. But for the record, yeah, it was a woman and a gay male. And the event was shut down. Firstly, the protesters out in the hall were making so much noise that the talk couldn't go ahead. And then someone proceeded to pull the fire alarm. I assume most of you know this, even though it was 6 years ago. You've probably all seen the footage. It's quite a famous meme, and the footage is quite famous, so I won't spend too much time explaining it. And Chanty Binx can be seen cheering when the fire alarm is pulled. Clearly, she thought this was a good thing. So, yeah, I didn't go into great detail about what the men's rights meeting was about, because that wasn't the point of the video. Plus, like I said earlier, this was my very first video. It was only 4 minutes long, and I was just showing what a hypocrite Chanty Binx was. Anyway, the commenter goes on to say, even looking it up, it's very muddy, but not addressing that at all, and clipping this together is biased and about as convincing to intelligent people as a Donald Trump speech. Yes, well, clearly this comment was not left by one of those intelligent people, because if it was, he would understand what the purpose of the video was, which was to show hypocrisy, which I think it did very, very clearly. It really doesn't matter what events she went to. The point was her behaviour was hypocritical. Now, it is true that she thinks that MRAs are the most evil people on the face of the planet, but you could say the same thing about a lot of Christians or other religious types, including Muslims, towards homosexuals. Does that give them the right to go to gay pride events and to shut them down? Now, just to be clear, I'm not suggesting the preacher in the clip was doing that. I'm talking in general. Either everyone has the same rights or they don't. I would prefer that they do. And I support the gay pride event, right? They should be able to march and celebrate their gayness. But MRAs should be able to have a talk about suicide as well. Seeing one as acceptable and the other as somehow evil is fucking ludicrous. But apparently intelligent people would disagree with that. Okay. He goes on. I mean, most of us would see men's rights meeting and not even go on, because that would be like saying white privilege. Yeah, white privilege meeting. Yeah, of course it would, right? Yeah, because when we're trying to talk about male suicide, that's male privilege. Yeah. He goes on to say, yeah, men's really have a rights problem in this country. Yeah, they do in many areas. Less likely to get custody of your children, more likely to die by suicide, more likely to be homeless, less funding for medical issues like cancer research and things like that, less likely to be believed or helped if you're a victim of sexual assault or domestic violence, more likely to be a victim of violence, more likely to be murdered. There are lots of issues that men face. But apparently we're not allowed to talk about any of them because that's somehow sexist and anti-equality, because all men are privileged, despite those things I just mentioned. Yeah, that's pretty black and white, don't you think? Not a lot of nuanced thinking there. But then again, this is an intelligent person, so what do I know, right? He goes on to say, even if what she said was stupid, it would never top a men's rights meeting by design alone. Yeah, a men's rights meeting he knows nothing about. He's just starting from the viewpoint that if men are talking about their issues, then clearly they're privileged assholes who hate women. And that worldview might just be a little bit wrong. You know, it might not be 100% accurate. Right? I'll let you make up your own mind whether that's the case or not. So I left a comment to him. I'll just put it up on the screen now. You can pause it if you want to read it, but I've pretty much covered everything I said in the comment. So let's go on to his comment, his reply to me. He says, "Dear Lord, you are messed up." Yeah, actually caring about men's issues and equality, pretty fucking messed up, isn't it? I didn't say anything biased. No, of course not. Of course you didn't, right? Comparing a men's rights meeting to a white privilege meeting, nothing biased about that whatsoever. No, you're perfectly reasonable. He goes on to say, "I made an observation that 90% of thinking people would see men's rights meeting and look the other way because of its absurdity." Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, if we went back just a little bit in time, 90% of the population would probably think the same thing about gay rights. And probably a little bit further back in time, 90% of the population would probably think the same thing about black rights. Does that mean that those people were right at that time? Or possibly do you think that maybe there needs to be awareness campaign so people can be educated and change their opinions? You know, like maybe having a talk about male suicide? You fucking moron. And by the way, argumentum ad populum, just because the majority of people believe something does not mean it's correct. If the majority of people believe the earth was flat, that would not make it technically flat. If the majority of people believed in the wage gap, that doesn't mean that the wage gap is real. I could go on with examples if you wanted me to, but I don't think I need to. I think flat earth and wage gap are pretty similar and get my point across. So let's move on to his comment. "So you admitted it." No, I didn't, because it wasn't relevant. Her behaviour was hypocritical regardless of what the two meetings were. Okay? It's not a subjective thing depending on your politics. It's an objective thing by comparing her behaviour. Next. "No bias, just facts." Yeah, okay. That's what you're calling them. When you say that men's issues are absurd, that's just a fact. Okay, we got it. "And all that stuff you said is true, but damn." Ah, well that's interesting. You fucking moron. Just a fucking second ago, you called men's rights absurd, and now you're saying that the points I made about the sentencing gap and male homelessness, etc., are all true. Can you make up your mind, please? You fucking idiot. But he does clarify a bit in the next comment. Let's read on. "You realise this stuff is many times worse for women than men." Really? So men getting longer sentences, that's really a women's issue because it's worse for women. And men not getting custody, it's worse for women because it doesn't really work out, does it? And male homelessness, that's worse for women because more men are homeless. Yeah, I don't think you've thought this through. For a thinking person like you claim you are, I don't think you've really thought this through. It's a shame. It's a bit embarrassing for you, isn't it? Now, I did mention also in my comment male victims of domestic abuse and sexual assault. Now, there is an argument that those things are worse for women in the sense that more women are victims, of course, depending on what statistics you look at. But my point was that men who report these things don't get taken seriously and don't have the same amount of funding or proportionate amount of funding. So in that sense, yes, it is far worse for men. And it's something that needs awareness spread about it, right? But apparently you think that is absurd. Okay. He goes on to say, "Yeah, women have a few things that society puts them first, like parental rights or even sentencing, but common sense is common sense, and society continues to struggle to see people of colour and females as equal to good old white men." Yeah, you do realise, you moron, that when we're talking about men, we're also talking about black men. Okay, when we're talking about sentencing, we're also talking about black men. Did you forget that? Why are you making the assumption that we're only talking about white men? Strange that you make that assumption, considering you claim not to be biased. Yeah, this thinking person seems not to be very thinking, methinks. But who's saying that we can't talk about women's issues? Why can't we talk about both men's and women's issues? We're not saying that men's issues should be exclusively talked about. We're saying they need to be talked about as well. Whereas you're arguing that only women's issues need to be talked about. And then claiming that it's about equality and male privilege. It's unbelievable. It's seriously unbelievable. Anyway, this idiot goes on to say, and this next bit is truly amazing, alright? So prepare yourself for this. So you are like telling a homeless person how the payments for your yacht are too high. Yeah. So he's comparing women's issues versus men's issues to a homeless person and a rich person with a yacht. What's amazing about this comment is that the vast majority of homeless are in fact men. Not a very well thought out comparison, right? Not a very well thought out analogy. Really, is it? But, you know, you're not really into thinking, are you? Next. Boo-hoo. It sucks society can't use common sense and just do what's right when it's needed rather than rely on gender roles. Or even ignore the fact that women can abuse men as well, a fact we tend to ignore and when bring up, get crucified for. Yeah, you mean the very thing that MRAs talk about. The fact that women can abuse men. The fact that you're calling us absurd for fucking talking about. Are you insane? It's unbelievable. He calls us absurd. He says thinking people would find us talking about these things absurd. And then he says that these are things that society should be talking about. It's incredible. The stupidity of people like this, it just blows me away. Even though I've been reading it for 6 fucking years, it still astounds me. Anyway, he goes on to say, I've been the victim of that and it scared me. Okay, if you're the victim of it, why are you condemning people who want to talk about it? Why are you calling us absurd for wanting to talk about victims like you fucking moron? Just incredible. The amount of brainwashing that has gone into Chad 4208 is just incredible. Talk about drinking the fucking Kool-Aid. This guy must have it every morning for breakfast. It's astounding. He goes on to say, and I never talk about it or even want to admit what it was, but I still try to keep a level head. Yeah, well, maybe you should come forward and talk about it. Maybe more men should. But, you know, then we get shouted down by people like Chanty Binx, don't we? Because feminists like Chanty Binx don't want men talking about their victimhood. Don't want men talking about their issues. They want them to shut up because only women are allowed to have issues. Which is what Chad 4208 is actually supporting. Anyway, I'm almost all the way through this. He goes on to say, but my only point was the omitting of the event attended was fishy, especially when you find out what it was, because I think you knew it would hurt your point. No, I've made hundreds of videos about men's rights. There is no reason why I would admit something like that. Not when I speak about it for hours at a time. Anyway, he goes on. Otherwise, why did you not say what it was? Well, because I was pointing out her hypocrisy. I wasn't talking about the actual event, which I have talked about in other videos, more than once. He goes on to say, If she was yelling at Nazis, then why would any rational person care? Yeah, but she wasn't yelling at Nazis, was she? And even if she was, it would still show hypocrisy, wouldn't it? Surely if she has the right to turn up at a Nazi event and yell at them, then they also have the right to turn up at one of her events and yell at her. That would be fair, right? Now, that doesn't mean I'm supporting Nazis, by the way, any more than I'm supporting feminists. But if you create a situation where one group can do this and the other can't, you're effectively creating second-class citizens, people who don't have the same rights. That's the point. And it doesn't matter if they're feminists or Nazis or MRAs or Hare Krishnas or Christians or fucking atheists or whatever. He goes on to say, doesn't fit your agenda. Oh, okay. Well, it's good that you know what my agenda is, right? To hide the fact that I'm an MRA, because I never talk about men's issues ever, do I? No. He goes on to say, I don't even know what this woman said. Far as I know, it could have been just as idiotic. Yeah, well, good to see you did your research, mate, before commenting and passing judgment, right? Not one gender is above the other, nor should either be given anything automatically just because. Really? Really, you believe that, do you? Which is why you said men's rights are absurd and that women always have it worse. That's equality, is it? Okay. It's an interesting brand of equality. Yeah. And I left a comment which I'll put up on the screen. You can pause the video if you want to read it, but once again, I think I've covered just about everything in it. But yeah, those comments always amuse me and make me somewhat sad that there are people that are that blind and brainwashed. And that's exactly what it is. It's brainwashing. I assume that Chad has learnt all of this through his schooling system and probably his peers, and his worldview is extremely skewed to the point where he's constantly contradicting himself. Oh, these men's rights issues are absurd. By the way, society should really care about them, which is why men shouldn't talk about them. Yeah, that's logically consistent, isn't it, Chad? Well done, mate. Well done. You're clearly a thinking person.
I'm preaching my what? My say it how you said it. My F and what?
Look, you're being disrespectful by showing up and spewing your Jesus shit at a fucking pride event.
Okay, I'm gonna address you. What did I say to you?
You're insulting our minds by being here.
You have the respect and you're swearing.
I don't give a fuck.
I know you don't.
I fucking swear at you because you're being a fucking asshole. And you know
what did I say to you?
It doesn't matter what you're saying to
I didn't even say anything to this girl and I'm insulting her. What did I say?
It's what you're saying to everybody here.
So your hatred against my religion, that's okay? Do you love anybody? That's called religious discrimination.
Intolerance. I did not.
You're being intolerant. She doesn't love intolerance, but she's being intolerant towards my religion.
Sir?
This is called religious discrimination. You have a lot of anger. Calm down. I am, but they have to calm down one by one. I'm going to give you guys the mic one by one. Can I? Don't tell me what to do with my mic. I'm going to give one of you the mic if you guys have.
Pot, kettle, and a kettle black.
If you want one person to talk, I'll give you the mic.
That we're working towards. Now, if you would shut the fuck up for the 50th millionth time. So, number one, shut the fuck up for a second. This is part of patriarchy. Oh, somebody doesn't want to hear what we're actually here for, so you just want to not talk over. I'm reading fuckface. I'm trying to I'm letting everybody else hear it, okay? It's not just for you, Mr. Entitled. Custody of your children, then listen the fuck up and understand what we're actually about, because it's not what those things are.
I'm just kind of curious then.